See, beta, coagulation of
Okay,
blood.
ma'am.
Yeah. So basically, the blood is flowing in the blood vessels, isn't it? So still, we find the blood is not clotting within the blood vessels because we have like heparin, like which is the natural anticoagulant which will prevent the blood from clotting. So coagulation is nothing but a process in which blood loses its fluidity and it becomes a jelly-like mass few minutes after it is shed out or collected in a container. Okay, that means whenever there is any cut, you will see there will be bleeding for some time. After that, what you will see, the blood will stop bleeding and there is a formation of clot. So for which within the blood we have the inactive clotting factors which are 13 in number. You need to memorize all these clotting factors. Chavi, we are doing physiology paper 1 beta and I just
Yes, ma'am.
started. Yeah. So
Okay,
these
ma'am.
13 clotting factors you need to memorize. Factor 1 fibrinogen, 2 prothrombin, 3 thromboplastin, 4 calcium, 5th labile factor and so on. So first after giving the definition and then giving the list of clotting factor, then we have two different mechanisms with the help of which if there is any cut in the blood vessel, you will see there are two mechanisms working which helps in the formation of blood clot. So first of all, we have intrinsic pathway. So intrinsic pathway is something like the damage which has taken place internally, inside. See, so much of we will sit, we will lie down, so much of crushing of capillaries is there, but still at the same time, are we finding any bleeding? No. Petechiae, small red collection of dots? No. That means what? Whatever small capillaries which are being ruptured, they are immediately sealed because of the mechanism which is taking place, like endothelial damage. So if you remember the structure of a blood vessel, if you remember a capillary, it has basement membrane. Resting over the basement membrane, we have endothelial cells. So whenever these endothelial cells are damaged, the basement membrane is exposed, that is the collagen exposure. Okay, whenever this happens, you will see the clotting factor 12 is converted to 12A, okay, in the presence of kallikrein and high molecular weight kininogen. So series of steps will take place, but 12A is converted to 11A, then 9 to 9A, and then 10 to 10A. Okay, so this is inside the body. Now, outside the body, that means we just fell down from certain height or some road accident or something where tissue trauma is there. So in the tissue, you will see the release of tissue thromboplastin. Okay, then again, here also series of steps will take place. So this tissue trauma and tissue thromboplastin will activate glycoprotein phospholipid. Okay. So factor 7 is converting factor 10 to 10A and this glycoprotein phospholipid will convert this 10th factor A into thrombin in the presence of calcium and 5th clotting factor. So finally, this thrombin, which is formed by series of steps, either through intrinsic pathway or intrinsic is internal bleeding, extrinsic is external bleeding, in a very short and easy way to understand. So this thrombin is now converted to prothrombin activator. So this prothrombin activator is actually converting the prothrombin to thrombin. So this thrombin will convert fibrinogen 8 to like loose strands of fibrin. Fibrin is nothing but the clot, meshwork or network of the threads, okay, which will form a tight clot into which platelet plug is formed and will not allow the blood to loose, okay, whether it is inside the body or outside into the environment, okay. So that is, so loose strands, they become tight in the presence of 13th clotting factor and calcium, that is fibrin threads, tight blood clot. So these are the two steps, very important essay question. So if you observe the other part of the question, you can see here we are asked like various clotting factors involved, then how is blood prevented from clotting inside the vascular system. How is it prevented? But inside, is the blood clotting inside the blood vessels, inside our veins, inside our arteries?
No.
No. Then how better? Natural mechanism. See this. This has been asked better. Anti-clotting mechanism
Oh,
in the body. Okay. So we have heparin, which
Okay.
is a natural anticoagulant, which will not allow the blood to clot inside the blood vessel. Suppose if the blood is clotting inside the blood vessel, what will happen? It will form thrombus. And that thrombus, with the pressure of blood, it will start circulating in the blood and it can get, like it can block anywhere in our cardiovascular system. So based on the place where it is blocking, that blocking is embolus. Blood clot is thrombus when it starts moving and it is going and getting stuck in any part of the body causing harm to that particular organ. We call it as embolus. That condition is thromboembolism. But are we suffering with this type of defects? No. Isn't it?
No.
Is the blood clotting inside the blood vessels? No. That means what? But also under physiological conditions, the intravascular clotting is not occurring because of some special factors in our body. So continuously the blood is moving. The blood is not at rest. Okay, that is the first mechanism. We have smooth endothelial lining. Endothelial lining, that is basement membrane and collagen, should not be exposed. If collagen is exposed, then only you will see the clotting factors will all come together and they form the clot, isn't it? So that is smooth endothelial lining of blood vessel is also preventing the intravascular coagulation. The other chemical factors is, we know, like we have a natural anticoagulant, that is heparin, that is produced by the liver. Apart from that, we have other factors like thrombomodulin, which is released by the endothelium. So this is binding with thrombin and it forms the thrombomodulin. Just now we saw. So this, by series inactivation of these clotting factors, that means thrombomodulin and protein C. Okay, so these two clotting factors prevents the clot formation. That means naturally the capillaries are not allowing this thrombomodulin. Just now you have seen this, no? But see here, tissue thromboplastin. Okay, so all these factors, whenever our we are at not in injury state, all these clotting factors are not allowed to become active. Okay, that is. Then all the clotting factors are in inactive state. They become active, they will be activating one by one, they will be activated only when there is some internal or external injury. Otherwise, they are all in inactive state. Okay, so substances which prevent the coagulation of blood are anticoagulants. So anticoagulants, we have actually now only intravascular is asked. That means we should talk about heparin. Okay, we will get a separate question also, beta, where we get as anticoagulants. There you have to talk about in vivo and in vitro. In vivo is within the body. In vitro is outside the body. When you see lab technicians collecting the blood, isn't it? So when we give our blood sample, the blood is collected in some containers which are already containing some anticoagulants which will not allow the blood to clot, isn't it? So like that, but the natural anticoagulant you have to talk in detail here. So the natural anticoagulant is heparin, which is produced in the liver by mast cells. Okay, so these mast cells are abundant in the liver and also lungs. Not only mast cells, but basophils also secrete heparin. So chemically, it is a polysaccharide. Commercially, also we can synthesize this heparin. Okay, and other from the other organs of animals. So commercial preparation is either available in liquid or dry form in combination with sodium, calcium, ammonium, or lithium salts. Okay, so mechanism of heparin, better you look at this flow chart, better it helps your easy understanding. So heparin, it suppresses thrombin action. It inactivates clotting factor 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. Okay, and so if these clotting factors are active, the blood will clot. No? So all these clotting factors and thrombin are inactivated. So see, when these clotting factors are inactivated, antithrombin 3 thrombin is removed and the blood is not allowed to clot. So this is the mechanism with the help of which heparin is not allowing the blood to clot. So uses of heparin, of course, it is a natural anticoagulant existing in our body. In vivo, I told you we synthesize it commercially also, either in liquid or dry form in combination with sodium, calcium, ammonium, lithium salts. No? So those are actually used in vitro. So intravenous injection of heparin can postpone the clotting for 3 to 4 hours. So it is widely used anticoagulant in clinical practice. So when do we use? When you are planning to do some intravascular blood clotting during surgery. Okay, intravascular blood coagulation is responsible. Give me an example where you are suffering with ischemia, cardiovascular accident, right coronary artery, left coronary artery, if any of these arteries blocked, what happens? There may be myocardial infarction. So when you are treating such condition, you generally give this injection so as to maintain the fluidity of the blood. Okay, while passing the blood through artificial kidney for dialysis. Then also we can't take the risk of the blood clot when it is coming outside the body, when it is passing through the dialyzing unit, isn't it? Then during cardiac surgeries, which involves heart-lung machine to preserve blood before transfusion. All these are the uses clinically. We use heparin. Okay. In the lab, generally we use in that container to prevent the blood clotting. Okay, but of course it is most expensive anticoagulant. Okay. So 0.1 to 0.2 milligrams is sufficient for 1 ml of blood. So, and it will retain the fluidity or liquidity of blood for at least 8 to 12 hours in vitro. Okay, after that, it becomes inactivated and automatically the blood will start clotting. Okay, beta, hope you understood this answer.
Yes, ma'am.
Beta. So that is various factors you talk about. Here actually the clotting mechanism, that intrinsic and extrinsic pathway is not asked. But still I have explained you, and the blood is how it is prevented from clotting in the vascular system. That means you should talk in detail about heparin. Okay, then we'll go to the next question now. That is modes of transport of carbon dioxide from the tissues to the lungs. So this is from respiratory system. We'll go to respiratory system. Transport of carbon dioxide. See, transport of gases. Basically, what are the two gases we have? Oxygen and carbon dioxide. Oxygen, that Bode's effect and all. We have studied in the other question. You see, he's asking us now transport of carbon dioxide. Okay, by the cells, by the blood from the tissues to the alveoli. Obviously, oxygen is utilized by the tissues, and when oxygen is utilized by the cells, you will see carbon dioxide is generated. So that carbon dioxide is now going back to the lungs for the purpose of expiration. So we have it is going back to the lungs and getting expired in 4 different forms. So either it will dissolve. Do you remember that universal formula with CO2 plus H2O? It forms H2CO3 in the presence of carbonic anhydrase. That is the universal formula we usually see in acid-base balance, many in physiology and also in biochemistry, isn't it? In renal chapter for the regulation of acid-base balance and also the acid-base balance of biochemistry we come across. So the carbon dioxide is dissolving in the plasma. That is nothing but that is water, and it forms the carbonic acid. So in the dissolved state also you will see the carbon dioxide is transported back to the lungs and thereby it is expired outside. Okay, that is now see as carbonic acid, of course it is quite like negligible. Then as bicarbonate, again that same formula you should remember better. Better you see here. This is the major form of transport of carbon dioxide as bicarbonate. How much? 63% of carbon dioxide is transported as bicarbonate. So for this, let us see this better. This is actually Hamburger phenomenon or chloride shift. Now what is happening inside the RBC? Now in the cell, the oxygen has been utilized. And we have various metabolisms, carbohydrate, lipid, and fat metabolisms. Through these various metabolisms, you will see the end product is usually carbon dioxide. So this carbon dioxide is now entering into the interstitial fluid, and the RBC should transport this carbon dioxide back to the lungs for the purpose of expiration. So how is it occurring? Through the interstitial fluid? No, it successfully enters the plasma of the blood. Then carbon dioxide enters inside the RBC. So we know this formula. Carbon dioxide combines with water to form H2CO3. That is the carbonic acid. So this carbonic acid is now splitting into H plus and HCO3 minus. Okay, that is the hydrogen ion and the bicarbonate ion. So hydrogen ion is now combining with hemoglobin, okay, to form hydroxyhemoglobin. Okay, and this bicarbonate ion is now going into the plasma. We know, if you remember from acid-base balance chapter, plasma is always keeping bicarbonate as a reserve, alkali reserve. 20 times the alkali is more in the blood when you compare with acid. That's the reason the bicarbonate has come into the plasma. It is combining with the sodium to form the sodium bicarbonate buffer, if you remember. Okay, so that is now this sodium, from where it has come in the plasma, we have sodium chloride, which is donating the sodium for the combination with bicarbonate. Okay, so in exchange with bicarbonate, the chloride is entering inside the RBCs. So this mechanism is called as chloride bicarbonate shift or Hamburger phenomenon. Okay, bicarbonate is coming into the plasma. In exchange, sodium is entering inside the RBC. Okay, this is one more mechanism. 63% of carbon dioxide is transported, okay, from the tissues, okay, via RBCs to the lungs in this form. Okay, so this is which form beta? This is bicarbonate. How much percentage is bicarbonate? 63. Just dissolving plasma 7%. As carbonic acid negligible, but maximum is bicarbonate, which is 63%. So apart from that, it is you are finding carbon dioxide is also combining with certain amino acids to form carbamino compounds. So 30% of transport of carbon dioxide is also taking place in the form of carbamino compounds. Okay, so that is what a carbonic acid. Bicarbonate is this chloride bicarbonate shift. Okay, then so reverse carbon dioxide shift is like reverse chloride shift is chloride ions are moved back into the plasma. Okay, so this takes place where when the RBCs are going into the lungs. So chloride is coming out, then you will see the bicarbonate will be going inside and then it will be diffusing in the lungs, so that it is carbon dioxide is expelled outside. Okay, then carbamino compounds. Carbamino compounds is combining with like hemoglobin and plasma proteins. So what are the plasma proteins we have? Albumin, globulin, prothrombin, fibrinogen. Okay, so the carbon dioxide is combining with the hemoglobin to form carb hemoglobin. It is also combining with plasma proteins to form carb amino proteins. Okay, carb amino hemoglobin and carb amino proteins are together called as carb amino compounds. Okay, so they are of course very loose, and only how much percentage is transported to the 30%. This loose bonding is there, it will get carried through the blood circulation to the lungs. Once it reaches the lungs, these carbamino compounds, when they reach the lungs, they get dissociated and carbon dioxide diffuses outside to the atmosphere, getting dissociated from the hemoglobin and other plasma proteins. Okay, just give one reading, you will easily understand better. So this is all about transport of carbon dioxide. Okay, so this transport of carbon dioxide, 4 different forms. So this carbon dioxide transport is also like we can like plot a graph like this. So partial pressure of carbon dioxide, we are finding 20, 40, 60, 80. Then concentration of carbon dioxide in the blood is also plotted in milliliters per ml. Okay, so carbon dioxide is transported in blood as physical solution and in combination with water. Just now what we have studied with 4 different diluted form or different 4 forms. The amount of carbon dioxide combining with blood depends upon the partial pressure of carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide dissociation curve is a curve that demonstrates relationship between the partial pressure of carbon dioxide and quantity of carbon dioxide that combines with blood. That means when the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is 20, then the concentration of carbon dioxide in the blood will be like 20 ml percentage. That means this much amount of blood is like carbon dioxide is being combined and then it is being exhaled. That means as the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is increasing, the saturation of this blood, four different states with which it is combining and it is transporting back to the lungs. It's also gradually increasing. Okay, that is. So normal carbon dioxide dissociation curve shows that the carbon dioxide content in the blood is how much? 48 ml percentage. When the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is 40, it is almost same only, but if it is 40, it is 48. Okay, so that means as if you observe this curve, if the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is increasing, you will see the exhalation of the carbon dioxide transport is increasing in four different forms and it is being exhaled through the lungs. That's what is explained in this paragraph. Now, Haldane effect is the effect by which combination of oxygen with hemoglobin displaces carbon dioxide from hemoglobin. That means now what we have studied is now RBCs are fully loaded with carbon dioxide and they are now moving back to the lungs. But in the lungs, what happens? After inspiration, the concentration of oxygen in the lungs is high. So whenever oxygen concentration in the lungs is high, it automatically displaces oxygen and now in the place of carbon dioxide, the oxygen is coming and combining with hemoglobin. That's what is called as Haldane effect. See, effect by which combination of oxygen with hemoglobin automatically displaces carbon dioxide from hemoglobin. That means carbon dioxide is now facilitated to be exhaled outside the body. Okay, so this is because high concentration of oxygen which is available in the lungs. That is only explained here. So Haldane effect is essential for release of carbon dioxide from blood into alveoli of lungs. It also facilitates uptake of oxygen by the blood, that is hemoglobin. Just read once better, you will understand. See, Hering-Breuer's inflation reflex is a protective reflex. See, our lungs, no, they are like balloons and they should not stretch beyond that. Like the tidal volume of lungs is not more than 1000 ml. But suppose if the inspiratory center of the, see, we have, if you remember the regulation of neural regulation of respiration, we have respiratory centers in pons and medulla. Okay, and in the medulla, we have dorsal group of neurons. So whenever dorsal group of neurons are stimulated, you will see there will be inhalation. But that inhalation should have certain check. Otherwise, lungs will expand beyond the normal range and the lungs may burst. So the protective reflex what we have in the lungs is Hering-Breuer inflation reflex. So when we are inspiring, suppose if the tidal volume is exceeding 1000 ml, then the lungs are overstretched. So the nerve receptors, like stretch receptors, that is the vagus nerve, takes the information to the brainstem, that is to the dorsal group of neurons, and it is giving the inhibitory reflexes, stop signals to the dorsal group of neurons. So when dorsal group of neurons are receiving stop signals, automatically inspiration is stopped. Okay, so that the inflation of lungs is reduced. So this self-protection reflex what we have in our body is Hering-Breuer's inflation reflex. Please remember better, please don't forget. See, we know the structure of nephron. In the structure of nephron, we have the Bowman's capsule inside which we have the network of capillaries, that is glomerulus contributed by afferent and efferent arteriole. The Bowman's capsule, from there you will see proximal convoluted tubule, Henle's loop, distal convoluted tubule and collecting duct. The primary function of this nephron is the formation of urine. The blood filters here with very high pressure. You call it as ultrafiltration. Once the blood gets filtered, you will see when the glomerular filtrate is passing through PCT, Henle's loop and DCT, so many changes will take place. No, that's the reason you use the word glomerular filtrate. You don't use the word urine until it reaches the collecting duct. So many like minerals like sodium, chloride, potassium, so many calcium, so much of things are reabsorbed. Water is reabsorbed, and left out things are excreted. They are allowed to let into the collecting duct, and they are just passing out in the form of urine. So he is asking us only distal convoluted tubule button. 308 page. Collecting duct. Oh, very small information. Distal convoluted tubule, the lining epithelium is cuboidal epithelium. There is no brush border. Brush border means suppose if you find the cell membrane is highly folded, in order to increase the surface area, in order to increase the area of absorption, if that is missing, you call it as without brush border. Brush border we see with PCT because maximum reabsorption, around 90% reabsorption will take place in PCT only, proximal convoluted tubule. Here, the distal convoluted tubule length is how much better? 14.5 to 15 mm and diameter is 22 to 50. Let us see. It is so less, but it is actually not much information is there, but still distal convoluted tubule is asked. Also, I didn't find much information. Better you talk about this counter current exchanger and multiplier mechanism. At least we will get many points here. From here till here, it is actually DCT. So in the DCT, you are finding the sodium chloride is moving from the tubular cells into the vasa recta. Hence, the concentration of urine is actually it's becoming from 1000, it's becoming more concentrated in 100. As it is moving up, more and more sodium chloride is going and getting absorbed through the tubular cells into vasa recta. From 100, gradually again water is also lost into the vasa recta. So 150 to 200. So these are the changes you can add better. The distal convoluted tubule. This one. In the presence of ADH, distal convoluted tubule and collecting duct become permeable to water, resulting in water reabsorption, helping final concentration of urine. Okay, so here the cells are the principal cells which are responsible for the absorption of water in the presence of ADH. So large quantity of water is reabsorbed, because of which you will see the osmolarity is increasing to 1200 milliosmoles per liter. Urine becomes hypertonic to plasma. That is, we don't have much information. Okay, that is distal convoluted tubule. I hope both of you remember composition and functions of saliva better. It's quite easy. GIT. Ritika? Yes, better. See,
Yes,
this is saliva composition. You have to give this table better. Water 99.5%, solids is 0.5. What are the enzymes it has? What are the other organic substances it has? Inorganic substances give the list of minerals, gases, carbon dioxide, oxygen, nitrogen, like that. After that, you give the functions. So what does it do? Saliva, salivary juice, it helps in making of food bolus so that it is preparing the food bolus ready to swallow, isn't it? When the food is thoroughly mixed with the salivary juice, it will be easy for it to come in contact with the gustatory cells, no? Taste cells, taste buds, what we have in the tongue and also in the oral cavity. So through the various, what are the various nerves which carry taste sensation? Cauda tympani is there, lingual nerve is there, isn't it? So many enzymes are there, no? Yes, like salivary amylase, it acts on carbohydrates. Maltase acts on maltose, lipase acts on lipids. So lysosomes will kill the microorganisms, phosphatases, carbonic anhydrase for the CO2 plus H2O action. Kallikrein, various enzymes are there. It also cleanses the oral cavity to not allow the bad breath to develop. Okay. So it kills the microorganisms because it has lysozyme. Okay, microorganisms like Staphylococcus, Streptococcus, Brucella. Okay, it helps in articulation of speech. Some of the drugs are also excreted in the saliva, some of the poisons. Then it also helps. See, in dogs and all, you see the tongue is protruded outside the body. That means it helps in the regulation of body temperature. In such animals, it also helps in the regulation of water balance. For the enzymes, you can just follow this table button. Amylase, maltase like this. What is the source of secretion, activator, and function? Okay, so this is all about composition and functions of salivary juice. Okay, then draw and label the ECG and explain the significance of P wave and ST segment. Okay, CBS. ECG. Page. See, what is ECG beta? We are taking the electrical activity of heart by making use of electrodes, isn't it? So we are trying to check the functioning of heart. So what is the specific question? He is asking us to draw the ECG of lead 2 and explain the significance of those waves. Okay. What is lead 2 beta? I told you we have different types of connections. No? So bipolar limb leads, that means these limb leads are otherwise known as standard limb leads. So two limbs are connected to obtain the leads and both the electrodes are active recording electrodes. Okay, now limb lead 2. So limb lead 2, how is this better? The negative terminal is attached to right arm and positive terminal is attached to left leg. This type of attaching of electrodes and then recording the electrical activity of heart is lead 2. So once you know this lead 2, then you have to draw this graph. Okay, so you need not draw this +1, -1 or something. You can directly draw this graph button where you have P, Q, R, S, T curves. Now, how are these waves formed? Recently, we have discussed cardiac cycle. So P wave is caused due to atrial depolarization. Okay, and the duration is 0.1 seconds and the height of this P wave is 0.1 to 0.12. Okay, amplitude or height is same. This is 0.1 to 0.12. Similarly, you have QRS complex. That means from here, see from the starting of Q and then this peak and then coming back to S. So this particular complex is QRS complex. So QRS complex, onset of Q wave to the end of S wave. So how is it caused? Ventricular depolarization and atrial depolarization. Duration and amplitude is given. Now in our question, what is asked? P wave and ST segment. So P wave we have just discussed and ST segment. So that means we are measuring from here till here button. This S and this T height. Okay, from here till here, whatever is there, you call it as ST segment. So ST segment, end of S wave and onset of T wave is nothing but ST segment. It is caused due to isoelectric contraction of the heart and and the duration is 0.08 seconds. Amplitude is negligible, very less. Okay, so these waves he is asking, then I want you to from P wave and ST he asked, right? So you should also talk about the diseases in which these waves are disturbed. The tables are given in new edition. In old edition, it is given like this. You can take anything. Both are same only. See, P wave. So cause we know duration. See clinical significance. At least give few examples better. Where you will see the P wave is altered. Okay, you see in right atrial hypertrophy, it is pointed. Left atrial hypertrophy, it is tall and broad-based. Like that, you have few examples, at least 4 to 5 you try to remember. Similarly, ST segment also, we have few examples, but this one, ST. Like from the table, you will be able to write the point, duration, everything. Like clinical significance, the deviation, see pathological inferior myocardial infarction, bundle branch blocks. Okay. So, and in athletes, ST segment is usually elevated. Depression is occurring in acute myocardial ischemia. Then posterior myocardial infarction, ventricular hypertrophy, hypokalemia. ST segment is prolonged in hypocalcemia and it is shorted in hypercalcemia. Okay, better. Then mass peristalsis. I think the link may go now, but I will resend. What is mass peristalsis? See, early morning we get that feeling of defecation. That means what? The rectum is like bulging and it is allowing the fecal matter to come out all of a sudden. That paralysis, which is causing peristalsis, which is causing the rush of undigested food from the anal orifice. That is mass peristalsis. We will see in GIT.